Let's talk about the multi-point inspection. Why is it important? Yes, it is a question on the survey, that does make it important. But why did the manufacturer pick it as a process to ask questions about on the survey? It's because the multi-point inspection is the #1 process on the service drive that provides you with an avenue to explain the value of the customer servicing at your store. Why is it important to you? Because if you use the multi-point inspection process properly, it'll help you make more money. Let's talk about processes and how to make them effective. It's really 3 things. #1, you have to do the process. If you don't do the process, don't follow the process, you're not going to be successful. #2, you need to make it memorable. If it's not memorable, the customer's not going to remember that you cover it. Duh. And then #3, before the customer leaves the dealership, you got to get them to acknowledge that you followed the process and that they recognize the value. Because if you didn't do it then, when they get the survey in a few days, it's not going to stay top of mind. So let's talk about each one of those and how we can positively impact the multi-point inspection. The first question I have for you is, when do you present the multi-point inspection? How do you present the multi-point inspection? In car dealerships, we have a tendency to not explain processes before we do them. In addition to that, a lot of times I'll see on the service drive where the service advisor won't talk about the multi-point inspection until the very last step in the process as they're cashing them out, where they'll completely ignore a 5 or 10,000 mile vehicle's multi-point inspection. And that's when you set the value up going forward for future service. So let's talk about do the process. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, while you're in here for your oil change and tire rotation, our technician is going to provide a complimentary 26-point multi-point inspection. It's kind of like when you go to the doctor. He checks your heart, he looks at your blood, tells you what's looking good, things that you need to watch, things that need to take action on right away. We do the exact same thing in the vehicle when we come do the multi-point inspection. By doing it this way, I've explained to them what we're going to do. Now, when I've explained, the next step is to make it memorable. Now, if the vehicle comes in with 20,000 miles on it, let's say the manufacturer recommends a 20,000 mile brake flush. Do you A, say to the customer, Mrs. Smith, at 20,000 miles we recommend that you flush your brake system? Or do you do B? Mrs. Smith, you know, here in North Texas we get very high temperatures. And in a vehicle, high temperatures can have an impact on fluids and they break down. In the braking system, what happens is you get moisture in the brake line, which causes your brake pedal to become mushy, and it extends the stopping distance. What we do is we pressurize the master cylinder, which evacuates the system, and we replace it with fresh fluid. What you'll find then is your brake pedal is firmer and the stopping distances are shorter. Would you like to take care of that today? Here I'm trying to show them the value of the brake flush to them and make it memorable. Which approach do you think they'll remember most? The third approach is to get the customer to acknowledge that you covered the service. Most manufacturers and dealerships has the customer sign the completed multi-point inspection at the end, and that's a great first step. What I recommend to dealerships is to go ahead and do what I would call a KPI review at the end of the process. When you're cashing out the customer, talk about the key points and processes you want to make sure they cover. So as an example, I might say, Mrs. Smith, at Hometown Nissan, we very much appreciate your business, and our goal is to provide you with an exceptional service experience. How did I do? We know, and my boss tells me, that if we follow these 4 or 5 process steps and take care of the customer with every one of these, that they'll have a better experience. Can I ask you just a few questions? Did I greet you in a timely manner on the service drive? Great. Did I review the multi-point inspection, you know, where I went over the vehicle and its condition? Great. Did I review the work that we did on your vehicle? Great. Did I keep you abreast and aware of what's going on with your vehicle while I was in the shop? Wonderful. Let me ask you one last question. Do you feel comfortable dealing with me at Hometown Nissan? More comfortable enough that you'd be comfortable sending your friends and family members here? Because that's really what it all comes down to. By tying all these processes together and getting the customer to acknowledge that you follow these processes, this is how you'll be successful and how you'll be able to sell more services on the drive.